almost always startup products are sold before it is ready. If a startup is selling product after it's ready, they're already late. That is where art comes in. And the product will fail. The people should not. At Nutanix, there's a conference happening in Las Vegas, and we took the entire company, 19 people on a private jet. We all decided to wear some sort of Nutanix t-shirt and run around the shop floor. They let it go for like 20 minutes and they shut it down and then threw us out. But within those 20 minutes, a lot of people found out. As soon as we got back, every day we'll make 100 cold calls. But here is the thing though, response time is respect. If you have 15 minutes to hunt a bear, you should spend 14 minutes sharpening the arrow. Sales is the same way. It is one of those most noble profession there is.
You joined Nutanix when there was no revenue, and then eventually you ended up scaling it to $1 billion in revenue.
I built enough operational credibility. By that time, Nutanix was almost $1.2 billion and $10+ billion in valuation, 6,000 or so people.
Sudheesh, moving to ThoughtSpot.
2018, when I get there, the data is already moving to cloud. The company needs to transform itself, but it is not an easy transformation. We need to shrink before we can expand. Compress my lessons of being a first-time CEO in a way that I could never before. So I took over the opportunity, but mostly because I fundamentally believe ThoughtSpot's mission. And when I left in 2024, when I look back, expanded into almost 1,000+ people almost.
What exactly does TinyFish do?
90+% of the web is underwater that nobody even knows. This is the deep web. Every single content that you write now is behind a login screen. That is not searchable. Your hotel pricing, sometimes you need to exercise and figure out what that is. So we launched this company in August and we highlighted this hotel with 8 rooms. A couple of weeks ago, we talked to them. Visibility and booking and all of those things have grown up by almost 40%. They didn't change a single thing.
Today I had Sudheesh Nair on the podcast. Sudheesh helped build Nutanix from zero to over $1 billion in revenue, then led ThoughtSpot through a major transformation as CEO, and now he's building TinyFish, an AI native company giving the smallest businesses superpowers. In this conversation, we go deep into his journey from Kerala to Silicon Valley, the art and science of enterprise sales, building in the AI era, and what fulfillment really means beyond money and title. Now I bring you Sudheesh. Sudheesh, excited to have you on.
I remember your message to me when you were starting this 1947 series and podcast. And I was like, that's a curious name for a podcast on technology. And it is so good to see when I look back your YouTube channel, the amount of content and the growth that you've had. Congratulations.
Thank you. Sudheesh, look, you've had an incredible journey so far. You've made a large impact at 2 large companies. Nutanix, you joined very early on, scaled it from revenue 0 to $1 billion. Then ThoughtSpot, and now TinyFish. Digging the name, by the way, we'll get into that in a bit. But before all of that, let's step back a bit, Sudheesh. We're really a byproduct of our environment. What really shaped you the most while growing up in India?
I think India is one of those things where it's very difficult to explain what one thing that made you right the way you are. For me, I think it is the idea that we are all a product of the society that you're growing up in. Like, if I am coming back from school in my elementary, and then if I happen to sort of sneak into a side-by store and buy some sweets, by the time I reach home, my mom would have figured out because somebody would have told me. This is even before cell phones. I don't know what that network is. It has lower latency than internet, right? I think everybody's business is everybody's business. To a certain extent, it can be bad, but in some other way, it's also very endearing. It's a warm culture across the board. People care. I'm not trying to say that is actually superior, but in a way that is very unique. And growing up in that kind of an environment, you realize that you are a small part of the big picture. That is one of the best things. Another thing that happens is that, compared to, my entire adult life has been the US. One of the things that I love about US, for that matter, is that people don't remember the failures of your own career or whatever that you didn't do well here. Whereas in India, for that matter, everyone remembers. 4 generations ago, your family had this business fail on you, so they will still remember that too. So, growing up in India, one of the things that happens is that you realize early on that the world is big, everyone is different, the languages will be different, but at the core of it, we are all the same. And that is, when you go to school, sort of pledge of allegiance that they make you recite every day in the school, this enforces that in your mind. it really prepared me for a big world. I always feel home no matter where I am. Wherever I travel, people look different, the languages are different, the food is different, whether it's a five-star hotel or like a hostel. Like 2 weeks ago, actually no, last week I was in Boston. By mistake, I booked a hotel. I didn't realize that the restrooms are actually shared. It's a hotel called Revolution Hotel. I didn't know what it was. I just booked it and went in. It's a startup, but we are not that small a startup that I had to share like a hostel kind of shared restrooms. But I did not feel like, oh, I got to get out of here and go to another hotel or any of that stuff. And I think I attribute all of that to growing up in India. Things may never be perfect, but you can find comfort in what you have. It's a beautiful thing.
Mhm. And Sudheesh, when did you decide that you wanted to move to US? And also, how did you get into tech?
Yeah. So it's not like I'm a huge fan of deliberate planning my life. And there are people I know who are really good at like figuring out what they want to be and when they want to go where, all of that. And then they make it happen. And if they don't, sometimes they also get very annoyed. So the blessing and the curse of my type of personality is that I don't really plan a lot, whether it is my own career or a company. What I do really well is keep my eyes very wide open, and I plant my foot really firmly on the ground. So I'm humble enough to know that things can change, but I'm also easy on myself when I make mistakes, which means that as the data presents itself, I'm able to make quick decisions, whether A or B. So it's not like I had this master plan that I need to go to US. And to be honest, I grew up in a in Carolina, so in a very middle class family, lower middle class family, very stable, loving family, but not a lot of resources. And it's not like US was accessible. The only thing I remember about the US was like Baywatch or something like that. So it wasn't a master plan. But what I am really good at is that when an opportunity presents itself, I'm always unafraid. So tech was a byproduct of that, in the sense that there was a campus interview that just happened, and I thought I'll do it, and I did it well, and then I made the most of it. I think it is one of those things that always works for me, which is I don't overanalyze. I use the data very well as and when it is available. I make decisions quickly and then correct the mistakes I've made. And in a world like now where things are happening so fast, you can always fix a mistake, but you can never take a step you didn't take. Go back in time and do that. So I think that is very necessary.
Got it. And Sudesh, look, you mentioned you look at the data, you won't overthink it. There are a few things that you look at, and then you just you know, go at it. So for you, Nutanix, look, it was something very new. It's a new category that they created.
Yeah.
Uh, what was the decision making for you at Nutanix? And you joined Nutanix when there was no revenue, no product, I think, and then eventually you ended up scaling it to $1 billion in revenue.
Yeah. So look, I think the company was founded by Dheeraj and Ajit and Mohit. Two of the founders, left very early, and Dheeraj is the one who can see behind the curve and what's happening before it happens. He has that ability to imagine from the very early days. For me, the reason it worked between Dheeraj and I is his vision I don't possess. My maniacal focus on execution is something that he doesn't possess as much as I did. So between us, this vision and execution turned out to be a really thing because it was built on a foundation of trust. And also, to be fair, we were also very young and we had nothing to lose. And there is something magical about playing like you have nothing to lose. It's sort of like every ball you're trying to swing for a sixer. We even celebrate players who do that. Like in the old days, Srikanth used to be that way. Gavaskar is like very defensive. I never liked the Gavaskar. And I found that the reason Nutanix worked is because some of it is that we decided that there is something fundamentally wrong with the world. In that world, we were taking compute, storage, network, and building together and giving a lot of money to everybody to buy and maintain that. And we said this should be inside a Linux operating system scaling out. It's a technology thing, but at the core of it, what it was we have to fundamentally disrupt the whole thing. And the way to do that is to find the biggest bully in the space and punch them in the face. And sometimes startups, we overestimate on TAM and what we can control, and we are scared to pick the biggest bully. If you truly believe that what we are doing is the best thing for customers, you should be happy, you should be thrilled, honored to go punch the biggest bully in the face who's doing injustice to the customer that you want to serve, right? We had that kind of passion. And to date, I don't do anything if I don't feel like we absolutely have the best thing for our customers. And that's not like a sales pitch. I genuinely believe. And if I'm doing that, and if a customer is not getting it, it's on me. I'm failing the customer, So that was that. Second, we were unafraid to go everywhere. From a go-to-market, I didn't know what I was doing. That was my first rodeo when it comes to sales. We built an organization that went global immediately. When the very first quarter, it was like early 2012, we sold deals in UK and Australia, in Sydney, and in Washington, DC, in the couple of quarters. How is that? We were working every angle, every lead, and then going and chasing it. And third is, we were very fast in innovating with customers. We never thought like we know all the answers. So we brought customers inside our engineering, and then we built with it. So those sort of things are still secular. We can still do those things in this AI world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ajit has mentioned about your, the velocity-driven mindset, and also at the same time not losing the balance. So Dish, take us back, right from the beginning. Look, you joined Nutanix, zero revenue.
Yeah.
How did you kind of scale? And you mentioned that you went globally or outside of US right away. Just walk us through the first few years, and also one or two deal that were massive for you that gave you the confidence that this is going to be something very big. And then eventually, how did you scale it to $1 billion in revenue within 7 years?
So these are really big questions. So I'll start with the first part, and then let's iterate, and then we'll go to the scale part. It is important to spend time on the 0 to 10. Then we'll talk more about it, because startups in general struggle to get the first 10 customers. And I want to spend a few minutes on this because it'll be useful, I think, because I've done it a few times and I made all the possible mistakes that I think we can make. And that really gave me clarity. So, startup instance, we have to first of all think, why would a customer come to a startup? It's more risky. There's a good chance that if they're reasonably good, they could get bought and killed. And if they're bad, they will run out of money. So they may not exist a year from now. They don't have the resources. They can never really understand what enterprise customer requirements are. So the reason they're coming to you is not because you have a brand, not because you have a lot of resources. There's only one reason they're coming to you. They're coming to you because they think you have innovative velocity. You're doing something that their large incumbent vendors have not yet done. So that is important to understand. They're coming to you for innovation. So you should not act like, we can actually do what the big guy can. No, we are not going to do any of that. We're going to do this one thing. So that is important. The second part is, someone once said that, if you have a lot of time, I will write a short book. Or if you have 15 minutes to hunt a bear, you should spend 14 minutes sharpening the arrow. And sales is the same way. It is one of those most noble profession there is. You're actually solving problems that customers are having, right? So startup founders often get confused, like, I need to have a large TAM. Actually, you don't. If you have a large TAM as a startup, you're actually going to confuse yourself. You're diffusing your message. What you should do is to see if I can actually find one customer, and for that customer, we are like 100% fit. So the first thinking is all about, in enterprise at least, how do I take my product and make it such a perfect fit for that one customer, that when that one customer sees it, they're like, oh my God, how did you know this? How did you know that this is exactly what I've been waiting for? Make that customer your first customer, and then make sure they pay for it. And then most importantly, make sure they're willing to tell your story on every possible stage. Come to a podcast, go to a conference, all of that, right? What happens is, if you find that one customer where it's a perfect fit, the world is so large, I guarantee you there will be another 10 customers that you can find. And they will be buying because the first customer already bought it. So 0 to 60 is about narrowing the TAM as opposed to expanding the TAM to a point that your product only works for one freaking customer. Like you should qualify to a certain extent. It should be like the customer name should start with A, otherwise it won't fit at that level. So that to me is the primary thing. We can talk more about scale, but this is an important thing that I do think that a lot of startups often don't get right.
And Sudheesh, we can get into 10 to 100.
Yeah.
We can keep building on top of it.
Yeah. So on 0 to 10, the next step would be, if you have one customer, at Nutanix, there's we were like 19 people at one point when we launched our product. There was a conference happening in Las Vegas. And we took the entire company, 19 people, on a private jet, basically Southwest. So we took everybody on a Southwest flight to Las Vegas. And VMware is this sponsor of the conference, and they don't let anyone do anything goofy. But we all decided to wear some sort of Nutanix t-shirt and run around the shop floor. And they let it go for like 20 minutes, and they shut it down and then threw us out. But within those 20 minutes, a lot of people found out. And then people came to our booth, and we got a lot of contact information. As soon as we got back, for the next, I would say 30 days, there was a very young person. His name is Aditya. He was such a freshman from college or something. Two of us closed ourselves in a room. And then every day we will make 100 cold calls. Out of that, like 90 people will hang up on you. 4 people will yell at you. Whatever, just keep doing. And then next day, we will do demos for all them who actually took our call. And then next day, we will do the same thing. So we went through like 1,000 plus in the first 3 weeks. People ask, how do you get the first list? It's not that hard if you're willing to put, and that even now works. You can't offload it to an outsourcing company or AI or any of that stuff. People need to know that you care enough to call, right? So we did that. But here is the thing though, response time is respect. Even now, people who email me, Slack me, whatever, I try to get back within a matter of seconds. I'm not talking about minutes even. As much as possible, I will get back. And I'm hyperbole a little bit, but in general, when I go back to sleep from morning to evening, my email, my Slack, my every other messaging, WhatsApp, everything will be zero inbox at least 20 times a day. So that kind of velocity is extremely important, because when you're a startup, no one is thinking about you, right? So if they saw your name, oh yeah, there's something called TinyFish. And within maybe 5 minutes, their life happens. Their production goes down, their kids are sick, whatever, they forget. Within those 5 minutes, if I get back to them, now you turn that into an opportunity. If you 6th minute, they moved on with the life and you missed. So someone is reaching out to you, response time matters. What I found is in the first 3 to 5 minutes, if you're responding, the propensity of that turning into an opportunity is like 3 to sometimes even 10x better than 6th minute or 1 hour later. How do we do that? We did that. And then third, final thing is that we went everywhere. Opportunities and talent are not equally distributed. Talent is distributed everywhere in the world. Opportunities are not. So we should assume that there are talented people all over the world, and you need to be there. So we were everywhere.
Sudheesh, you're right. Look, this is what I've observed, and I've been a salesperson my whole life. I love cold emailing and love reaching out to people. I've seen the more successful the person is, the faster their response is. Either you get the response or you will never get the response.
I know you are a phenomenal cold caller, because 3 years ago I got your LinkedIn, and then you were so respectful. The name captured a lot of beauty. 1947 is dear to all Indians, and you continuously, respectfully pinged every year, and finally we are talking. And you're absolutely right. I think I don't know if it is a cause and effect. Is it possible that people who are responding are more successful? Okay, maybe.
And Sudheesh, was there a decision that you made at Nutanix which shocked almost everyone at Nutanix, but you knew you were right?
The first part, yes. Second part, no. And I'll be very honest with you. Most of the consequential decision that you make, you're making with half-baked information. The higher up you go in an organization, the less clear inputs are. Because if the inputs are clear and the decision is somewhat relatively clear, those decisions should be made somewhere down. If not, you're making all the decisions. That means your organization is not functioning, right? So a lot of decisions are counterintuitive. And in fact, I will tell you an example. So if we were just talking about Nutanix, our decision to go directly to federal business is extremely complicated. It's really, really hard to get into US federal, and most companies will wait 2-3 years before they get there. So there was an incoming request from Department of State. And my personality is that it came within a few minutes. I called them and then I started to do a demo. And the next thing, they said, yeah, this looks interesting. I had no idea that federal government can't simply buy something. You need to be on a specific list and you have to go through a specific test and check. We were like 15 people, there is nothing else. But it's basically we are a carnival, and these guys are like thinking like we are some really kind of, nothing stopped us, because when we saw that, my decision was that we are going to do whatever it takes to get into that. We found a distributor called Carasoft and we signed them up. They gave us the coverage necessary to sort of give it all the paperwork. They took the deal, helped us through the paperwork, and that was like $300,000 deal, which is a really big deal at that time. And then subsequently, few quarters later, we closed a $17 million deal. In federal. And you think about it, it's not an linear decision to actually go from that to that. When you look at $70 million, oh, let me go do that again. That is the wrong way to do it. It's not because of like everyone is going to get that kind of deal. What matters is the ability to say, is this secularly taking the product in the wrong direction? Because if the product is going to go the wrong direction just because a customer dangled a large deal, that's the wrong thing. You have a vision, you have a mission, and you're executing towards it. And in that process, if it doesn't deviate too much, you should do whatever it takes to deliver more and more value, because nothing of value is ever built until you sell. And that's why I said sales is the most noble profession there is. There is not a single company that is built of anything of value until people start selling. And selling is a profession that requires both art and science.
And Sudheesh, let's dig deep into that. Art and science. What do you mean by that? And also, someone who wants to perform at very high level in sales, what would be the 3 or 4 things that are required for that?
Okay. Art and science is very straightforward in the sense that sales is the most metric-driven business there is. There is no way to really quantify an engineer's job or performance. It's very difficult to do the same thing for customer support, marketing. But sales, every 90 days, you sort of know whether they're a hero or a zero, right? So it's very metric-driven, which means that you can work backwards and then have the science and the algorithm behind every single thing you do. Whether it's product-led sales or people-led sales, you can clearly see what does it take for me to make the number and company to make the number. And that means you can instrument everything. You can instrument touch points, you can instrument message quality, A/B test everything, the value of the people, the enablement, the training, the product, all of that stuff. It's all changing and evolving in the AI world, but the science part still remains. But here's the thing though, no amount of science, no amount of product pitch, no amount of technology conviction is not going to move the needle unless you are working for a very large company. Sometimes, people already decide they just want to buy. For a startup, it is missionaries who are selling, not mercenaries, which means that you're selling less and you're inspiring more. So if you are able to inspire, people will actually take the journey with you. And almost always startup products are sold before it is ready. If a startup is selling product after it's ready, they're already late, right? That is where art comes in. And what does that mean? The product will fail. The people should not. That is the art of it. The building trust, making sure that the customer understands that you get them. When a customer is giving a check to a startup, basically they're saying, I am counting on you to not let me down. Because if this works, I'm going to get promoted. If this works, I will have more time to spend with my family. If this works, my organization will recognize me and reward me. Because ultimately, we all do things for our own sake. That's what it is, right? To do that, to own that, to communicate that clearly, you have to build that kind of trend. That cannot be the quote unquote sales thing. It has to be authentic, right? That ability to communicate that authenticity bringing the entire organization to say, you should never let this customer down because they took a chance on us before the world is ready to believe. That is the art. Like, you are sitting there asking all these questions, making me speak about all this. That is art. The fact that you reached out to me many times and then got this going, that is art. That's not robotic, right? So art and science of sales need to come. That is why I'm not afraid of what AI will do to sales. In fact, AI will separate those who cannot perform art and make sure that they don't succeed as much as those who can actually do the art part.
Mm-hmm. Sudheesh, moving to ThoughtSpot. How did ThoughtSpot happen for you? And what is one or few accomplishments that you had you had at ThoughtSpot which really makes you feel proud of it?
I think the how ThoughtSpot happened is because Ajit was running the company for 6+ years, and there's a Ravi Matre who's the founder of Lightspeed. He was at Nutanix as well, and he and Ajit asked me to come and take a look at it. I built enough operational credibility. By that time, Nutanix was almost $1.2 billion and $10+ billion in valuation, 6,000 or so people. And I wanted to do something different anyway. And Ravi reached out, and we talked, Ajit, Ravi, and I. And the thing that ThoughtSpot started with the phenomenal idea that we should be able to have a conversation with data. You spoke to Amit. It's basically, he's the brains behind ThoughtSpot's ideas. And when it started, 2012, the data was on-prem, and it started there. 2018, when I get there, the data is already moving to cloud. The company needs to transform itself, but it is not an easy transformation. It requires hard decisions to be made. The company was, built around in the US and the on-prem business. We need to shrink before we can expand. So for me, it was a challenge. I did not anticipate COVID, of course, but I thought this will compress my lessons of being a first-time CEO in a way that I could never before. So I took over the opportunity, but mostly because I fundamentally believe ThoughtSpot's mission, which is people who are seeking the insight should get that, whether they know SQL or not.
Mm-hmm.
That is like everyone who wants to make data-driven decisions should be able to have a conversation with the data. So we were AI for BI way before AI was even cool that way. So, but the problem is it needs to be rebuilt on cloud, and Snowflake was taken off. So my point of view was that we will build on Snowflake, but companies to transform. So the company had like 300 or so people. We had to do multiple rounds of layoff. To answer your second part of the question, I'm actually proud of the way we did that on COVID. We transformed the company where we had to let go of a lot of people. These are the hardest decisions you make. But when I look back, I think we did as well a job as we could, particularly with COVID. We treated everybody with respect. We did multiple rounds of layoff, and then we expanded. And when I left in 2024, when I look back, the company had close to, expanded in terms of size, like almost 1,000+ people almost. And as you mentioned before this conversation, a lot of that investment we did in India too. I'm very proud of all of that. It's a great company with an amazing culture, and there's a great CEO now running it. Ajit is still involved in the company. And most importantly, I still talk to customers of ThoughtSpot who say we love the product. So whether it's Nutanix or ThoughtSpot, I've always believed that the product that we have built are best in class, and we never let the customers down.
Look, moving to TinyFish, Sudheesh, how did you come up with the name? Let's start with that. And what's the founding story of TinyFish?
So the founding story for TinyFish was my itch that I have to do something different because AI is fundamentally changing everything, and we need to really be on the other end of it in a new company. So there are three of us who are the co-founders, Shuhao, Keith, and I. Shuhao and Keith are middle school friends when they were in China, but they took completely different route. So the name and the idea of TinyFish, I need to tell these three stories. Shuhao is one of the most brilliant, humble, introverted guy who is probably one of the top 10 experts when it comes to browsers and how browsers work at scale. He was at Meta before this, and Keith took a completely different part. He was a journalist for Bloomberg, Reuters, and Wall Street Journal, a very high level in the sense that he was Pulitzer nominated and he was a finalist for writing about the Hong Kong protest. And then me. When you think about three of us, very different group. But it all came together because, for example, Keith had this fundamental belief that journalism is completely being bastardized because of the way information is sold out for the highest bidder. Newspapers are dying, information arbitrage is all broken. So he was like, is there a way we can actually reset it so that those who see get what they want in a pure, optimal way? Shuhav's thesis was that internet has become too big for humans to manage. We need to somehow abstract people away from the browsers. And for me, ThoughtSpot really taught me that no matter how magical the tool is, garbage in is garbage out. How do I get the best possible data? And what we found was the most valuable data almost always starts on internet. But the problem is just like the water, it's polluted. So it's very noisy. So you have to spend a lot of money to ETL it, put it to Snowflake, and then put to a BI product. It's not fresh, but at least it is clean. So I was thinking, why should we compromise? Why can't we have the freshest data in the cleanest way from directly from internet through agents? Put it all together is TinyFish. The name TinyFish is because if you think of the internet, there are thousands and thousands of providers and service providers and hotels and coffee shops and all of them. AI is going to create a chasm between the haves and have-nots. The large ones will deploy technology and then make advantage of AI. Think of like ChatGPT and others. Which coffee shop should I go? How do I know that this small coffee shop will show up? They don't have the tools or the API, the time or resources. And we often go to the ocean to look for the whale watching and the dolphins, but we never pay attention to the tiny fish in there. But those tiny fish are making the ecosystem work. And we thought there is an opportunity for us to use our technology to help the smallest fish, the longest tail of internet. And that's why we are very passionate about this mission.
Now, look, love the name, and I love the story behind it and the mission. I was with a friend the other day, and I was telling him that I'll be having Sudheesh on the podcast, and he founded a company called TinyFish. He was just in awe with the name and the logo as well. Sudheesh, imagine our audience is 15-year-old. What exactly does TinyFish do? We can take an example. I think DoorDash and few other companies are your customers. Just kind of like help us, understand this is how TinyFish is helping the customers that you have.
I will do one better. So I'll tell you the vision of the company, which is like secularly, why should something like this happen? And then I will tell you what we do. So think of like Google. When you search something, everybody used to search on Google. Everybody still searches on Google. And every time you search, in fact, they don't show that now unless you click on the three dots, but it'll tell you that, okay, Shiva, you search for this. Here is the answer, but I also found 1.357 billion answers within 0.4 seconds. It's a bragging. It's an amazing index. There are over 4 billion websites that indexed Google indexes. But what people don't realize is the entire web, only less than 7% of the internet is actually indexed. 90+% of the web is underwater that nobody even knows. This is the deep web. What is that? Think about this. Every single content that you write now is behind a paywall or a login screen. Your Instagram, your social media, your New York Times, your Hindustan Times, right? Reddit, everything is behind login. That is not searchable unless you log in and execute and click, right? Second, APIs. Your hotel pricing, sometimes you need to exercise and figure out what that is. Your flight pricing is not something you can search. That's second. Third is that 1.4 billion answers that it showed, less than 0.6% of people even click the second link. Second page, which means that if you don't show up on the first page, you die as a company. This is worked for so far. So if the 15-year-old were to ask, but Sudheesh, that all works now. Why do you want to change anything? The 15-year-old tell me that, okay, yeah, I understand it won't work because people are moving from that to AI-generated answers. Even on Google, you don't even click the link anymore. You're looking for that zero-click summary. So if you're asking what's the capital of India and it says Delhi, that is okay. But if you're asking which coffee shop should I drink, I don't want one answer. There are times where the journey is the reason why you're doing it, not the destination. If you want to fly to San Francisco, I don't want the AI to simply book the business class flight. I need it to tell me, look, this business class is 15,000. I don't want it. 4,000 maybe. 3 stops, no. The journey is like you're trying to find the best hotel for traveling with your family. You want to go through all the hotels. I like this. I don't like that. That journey is fantastic. But you're going for a business meeting and you just want to find something next to the conference room. That's okay. Maybe automation, the destination, the goal. You have different reasons why you browse. But browsing as a human process has sometimes purpose, sometimes doesn't have purpose. What we want to do is that when you think about the new world where AI is going to just short circuit all of that and give you that answer, the 90+% underwater become even more severe. We think it is important for us to set the goal and the AI figure out how to get the goal completed. So for example, if I want to find the best podcast episode anywhere that is built in India that talks about expatriates from India coming back, thinking about going back to India and starting a company. Let's say that's an example. On YouTube, if I had to search for it, there will be like 100,000 answers probably, right? Imagine instead of me having to watch all of them, which I will never, if I could execute agentic workflows that goes log into YouTube, searches, select all those videos, removes all the junk and sponsored content, and then watches all those videos and come back and say, here is episode number 123 that Shiva made, which I think would be the right one. That is an outcome-driven web. Internet has become too massive, too dynamic, too complex for humans to do things that we did before, which was searching and browsing. Just think about it. Let's say you're going to office tomorrow and you can't find your car keys and you're searching for it. That's a suboptimal experience, isn't it? In any other context, search means you're lost. Somehow in the internet, we have come to a point where like search is how actually do anything. That was built for the old world of static. That's what Google built. The new world needs to operate. TinyFish means that we humans should be able to set the goal and my agent should go operate at massive scale. Like hundreds of thousands of websites in parallel, it should go do things and come back and say, here is what I found for you. That is possible. And we are starting in that journey.
Sudheesh, feel free to give an example of a customer that you have.
Yeah, so the best example is the one that I highlighted on our website. There's an 8-room hotel in mountains of Japan called The Week. 8 rooms. Our customer is Google. Google has a product called Google Hotels. Google Hotel is this travel meta. They want every hotel in the world to be available for them to price and inventory. The problem is hotel price is changing constantly. So you can't just say hotel is $120 all the time, right? And to get the real-time pricing, you need to have APIs. These 8-room hotel are not going to put the API and rewrite their website so that Google has the right pricing. So what Google does is Marriott and Hilton, they will show the right price. And then this little hotel, they will say, contact the property. And today's world, no one contacts them. There are thousands and thousands of hotels. You know what our agents do? On behalf of Google, our agents will log into these little hotel websites all over the place in Japan, multiple thousands of them, multiple times a day maybe, create different scenarios to book 3-person, 2-person, 3 days, 1 day, king, queen, whatever. And then take it all the way to checkout and collect all that information, availability, pricing, and all of that. And then cancel the transaction, automatically update Google inventory. All of a sudden, these hotels show up as if it is API connected, which means that all of a sudden these hotels now have people are browsing and they see, I like this little hotel. Oh, price is right. Okay, I'm going to reserve that. This is transformational because this is the TinyFish. That hotel is a TinyFish. And through AI, we brought them onto this platform. So we launched this company in August and we highlighted this hotel with 8 rooms. Couple of weeks ago, we talked to them. Their visibility and booking and all of those things have grown up by almost 40%.
Oh, wow.
They didn't change a single thing. This is the kind of technology that could really benefit humanity if we do this right.
Love it. This is exactly what you're doing, where you're helping people do what they should be doing and what they're good at, which is taking care of their customers and guests, and rest is taken care by TinyFish. And Sudheesh, look, you're known as one of the best, I would say, enterprise sales leader. We've talked about, look, the successes and the wins. I want to also talk about the failure or learnings. Uh, you know, was there, or let me put it this way, was there a deal that you ended up losing when whether it was at Nutanix, ThoughtSpot, or at TinyFish, but that deal taught you more than the deals that you won?
Yeah, I think, let me think about this. So I do not think of deals winning, losing as that big a deal, in the sense that, if you win some, you lose some. But I always used to say, if you're running a company, your fair share is 100%. I don't want to lose a single deal,
Hmm.
right? Of course, it burns, but you get on. And one of the reason I like about athletes and sports is that one of the best quality for athletes is their ability to forget their mistakes. For example, if you bowled first ball and then the batsman took you for a six, there are bowlers that we know in Indian teams that get all bent out of shape, and next thing you know, the next ball is wide, the next one is a no ball, and then the third ball is six again. And then there are those who, like Bumrah, who will never forget that their job is to deliver, and he always forgets that the last ball was a mistake. The ability to sort of get your mistakes behind you and forget them and then pick the lessons from it
Hmm.
is a beautiful thing. So I've always been like that. So there are lots of deals, a lot of mistakes, but I don't carry them. I do carry the lessons, and one of those lessons is radical candor is existentially important when it comes to sales. I think a lot of sellers are afraid to tell the truth sometimes. We are not that good. We cannot do this thing. Yes, it was our fault. Yes, we can't get that price. They somehow think that if you just shy away from that hard question, somehow the customer will give you the PO. They never do that. Yes is the best answer. The second best answer is no. The maybe is the worst thing. And a lot of salespeople know in their heart that they won't get the deal, but they will not ask that one question because they don't want the customer to say no. And somehow it works. And it doesn't work like that. That's a lesson that I carry based on a lot of deals that I lost.
Hmm.
When it comes to people, for example, I would rather talk more about people. Like, I've always considered that hiring and firing are two sides of the coin. And no normal person would love to fire people. Like, we all want to hire people and keep them all happy. But the reality is, our business is either because of our mistakes or the poor hiring or the person's performance or things changing, either our side or the people side, you have to part ways. And sometimes, like in ThoughtSpot and others, we have to do that in like larger groups, like layoffs. It is not easy to check the emotion out and then just be logical. None of us are like sociopaths. But how do we use the emotion to make sure that you do it the right way?
Hmm.
And how do you use the logic to make sure that you do deep enough? It's like the common mistake any CEO that you've done, the number one mistake that they would have made, that I also made when it comes to layoffs, is that they didn't go deep enough. It's always the case that you think like, I can get away with 7%, maybe 8%, but it should be like really be 15%. And you know what happens? 3 months later, the morale is down and something else happened, then you do it again.
Hmm.
Every CEO will say that, and every CEO will not do this again and make the same mistake. So life is full of these kind of lessons. I don't take myself like, I'm not infallible. I know that. So whether it's deal, whether bad mistakes, I don't remember the exact instance, but I definitely remember the lessons.
Hmm. Got it. Sudhesh, look, my co-pilot is sending me signals, and he wants to get in, and he wants to drive the final part of our conversation.
Oh my God.
Look,
Okay.
he's asking. We know Sudhesh as as an operator, as a founder. What do Sudhesh's friends know Sudhesh for? Who is he outside of work?
I'm a recluse, actually. People believe it or not. I don't socialize much. I don't go to parties or anything as much. I am really good at being there for people who when they need me. So I think my friends will say that I'm very dependable, but they also know that sometimes they have to pull me out
Hmm.
to get them when they don't need me.
Yeah.
Like when they really need me, I'll be there, but otherwise, they have to pull me out. But having said that, I'm also changing some of that stuff. I read a lot. I'm very active. I'm constantly, like, I got into working out a lot now, eating healthy. You're at that age where you have to do all of those sort of things. But in general, people think that I'm a dependable guy. So I think that's a good place to be.
Absolutely. And Sudesh, uh, what are you most obsessed about these days outside of work?
I am obsessed about I'm obsessed about fulfillment. I wonder, maybe it is like a midlife crisis or something that I went through. I think about like the what makes people happy and when do they feel fulfilled? Because like Maslow's hierarchy, people talk about food, clothing, shelter, and anyone who says money doesn't bring happiness is lying. But the ROI of money significantly reduces after some time, in the sense that you can keep chasing. The happiest person is the richest person. Elon Musk should be the happiest person in the world, which we clearly know he's not based on his Twitter.
Hmm.
But there is a certain amount of wealth that gives you the kind of freedom to enjoy life. The question is, when do people realize that they've reached the line? Because we all have different lines for that. If there is a way to scientifically prove that you have reached that line and the ROI on the extra dollars have significantly shrunk, how would you find fulfillment? What would you do?
Yeah.
And this is not a function of having X amount of money. Like when I grew up, we didn't have a lot of money, but it was a solid family. We had like a brother and I and my parents, and full of love. And we were very, like, my mom ran a really tight house. And brother and I constantly clashed, but we were always great friends after that, becoming adults.
Mhm.
And even now we are very close, all of us. And I don't think there could have been anything money could have added in terms of happiness at that point. Now, obviously, we are all in a different place in terms of wealth, but I do not think that I'm happier now or less happy at that time. So it is like the baseline has changed, though. Like, I will not be happy to go back to that way, or my family were to go back, it will not be right. So it's very nuanced. So I'm very obsessed about figuring out when I'm not working, when I'm not thinking. Tiny fish, I'm like 24 hours, it is in my mind. But when it is not, I think about figuring out how do I find the meaning of fulfillment. I know that sounds like an extremely cuckoo bohemian answer, but to be honest, that's where I am.
That's what's been in your mind these days. So Desh, thank you so much. Really appreciate you for taking the time and walking us through your journey so far and telling us more about what Tiny Fish is up to. And I'm very excited for you and for Tiny Fish. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Shiva. I appreciate it, and thanks for taking the time.